Let's take a look at parathyroid hormone. Okay, parathyroid hormone can also be abbreviated capital P, capital T, capital H. Things we're going to talk about. We're actually not going to take a look at disorders and diseases today. So pretty much everything else is what we're going to mention. The stimulus for the secretion of parathyroid hormone is decreased blood calcium levels, also known as hypo, which means too little. That root word meaning calcium, and then emia meaning in the blood. Just to kind of give you guys an idea on the normal range here for blood calcium levels, around 9 to 10 milligrams per deciliter in the blood. And what happens if it's too high? Actually, if blood calcium is too low, but parathyroid hormone secretion is too high, or if blood calcium levels are too high, but parathyroid hormone levels are too low. So these are just some causes of what could happen if your calcium levels are out of range and your parathyroid hormone levels are out of range. So based on looking at those two, you can kind of figure out what the problem is. And then if you were interested in what a person presents with when they have low blood calcium levels. So you can kind of read through that on your own if you want to. Where is parathyroid hormone secreted from? It's secreted from the parathyroid gland, which sits behind the thyroid gland. So it is these little nodules right here that are on the posterior side of the thyroid gland, and you have 4 of them. So there are 4 nodules. So you're looking at the posterior view here of the thyroid gland. So they're sitting in the back of that. Now, what are the target cells and what's the response of these target cells when parathyroid hormone is present? Well, you've got 3 main targets for parathyroid hormone: bone, the small intestine, and the kidneys. And this should sound really familiar because we mentioned this with calcitonin. So if you've already seen the calcitonin video, you're like, dang, those are the same places. They are the same places. And it's pretty much the opposite of what calcitonin does. So bone, when parathyroid hormone is present, it increases osteoclast activity. We should probably put activity at the end of this. It doesn't increase them, it just increases their activity. So if you remember what osteoclasts do, osteoclasts break bone down. And when they do that, the calcium and the phosphorus go into the bloodstream. So remember, this was secreted when calcium levels were low. So when osteoclast activity increases, it will raise blood calcium levels because they're going to break that bone down and put the calcium in the blood. Another thing that's going to happen is it's going to act on the small intestine. Parathyroid hormone will act on the small intestine, and it will cause the small intestine to increase calcium absorption. So it's going to tell the small intestine, hey, you need this calcium that we're eating, you need to take it from the small intestine and put in the bloodstream now. We need it there. However, if you don't have vitamin D, parathyroid hormone can tell the small intestine all at once all day long that you need to be pulling the calcium out of the small intestine. But vitamin D is the transport molecule, so to speak, that takes it from the small intestine to the bloodstream. So we'll talk about vitamin D here in just a second. Actually, kind of like right now. Kidneys, they increase calcium reabsorption. So keeping in mind what calcium reabsorption is, or what reabsorption is, that means we're taking it out of the urine and putting it into the blood. So we're reabsorbing it. We're moving it. And if it may not be urine yet, you could call it what we would call before urine, which would be the filtrate. So the waste. So kidneys make urine. So somewhere along that path, the kidneys, when parathyroid hormone is present, is going to pull calcium out of that waste and return it to the bloodstream, increasing blood calcium levels. So you got 3 different organ systems that are involved in helping raise blood calcium levels. Now, the kidneys also, if you guys remember, the kidneys also activate vitamin D, which is called calcitrol, the active form of vitamin D. So, because of the activation of vitamin D, parathyroid hormone does that. That means vitamin D is available to be that carrier molecule to allow calcium to get out of the small intestine and into the bloodstream. So, again, parathyroid hormone is going to tell the small intestine, hey, get the calcium out of the small intestine and put it in the bloodstream. And because vitamin D, the active form, calcitrol, is going to be present, because parathyroid hormone tells the kidneys to start activating it. That's kind of a double dip, right? So it's two ways you're going to be talking to that small intestine to let it know to do that. The class is a peptide hormone. Um, I'm not going to ask you anything more than it being a peptide hormone, but just kind of, I think it's kind of cool to see the amino acid sequence, and you can see there's 84 amino acids in that chain, and this is what the quaternary structure is going to look like when it's all folded and bent. So just kind of cool. So parathyroid hormone counteracts the calcitonin. So again, it kind of does the opposite of what calcitonin does. And remember, calcitonin comes from the thyroid gland. So if we follow along the bottom path here, so we've got homeostasis here in the middle, but if blood calcium levels are low, so we're going to kind of start here and follow our way around at number 4 there. So if calcium levels are low from the parathyroid hormone, from the parathyroid gland, I'm sorry, you will get parathyroid hormone. Parathyroid hormone acting on those 3 organ systems will result in a raising of blood calcium levels, and that's going to return that back to homeostasis. So a really nice example of negative feedback. And that's the end of parathyroid hormone.